retired bank robber. I tattoo, I write books. I grew up in the system. I was 30 or 31 and then I changed my life. I'm an ex-addict. I've been sober a long time.
This is all in LA?
All in LA. I'll tell it, I got picked up by that serial killer Randy Kraft. Have I ever told, do you know anything about this?
No.
Okay, well, one time I would hitchhike everywhere. And my family lived my mom lived in Phoenix for a while. And I'd go there like one day and then her boyfriend would say, he's got to leave. And she'd give me $5 and I'd be on the on-ramp going, well, I hitchhiked to the East Coast, West Coast. I surfed too. So we'd surf in the summer in New Jersey. The first summer I was gone, back up, and when I was young, we surfed in New Jersey, and then we surfed, when it got cold, the West Coast, and that was my entrance into California, was surf and skating. And that's how I ended up in the spiritual things. But one time me and Andy, this kid Andy Nolis, he was a little older than me. We were hitchhiking. We were in San Diego. We were hitchhiking to Phoenix, and this guy pulls up. And we were on the on-ramp with another kid, and there was rules to hitchhiking. They don't do it like that anymore. We're talking 70s, or maybe 8.
I can barely remember a little hitchhiking when I was very young.
And so if you got to the on-ramp first, you get first. There wasn't a string of people hitchhiking. The guy would wait. He'd be there, but he'd wait. And so me and Andy hitchhike. Guy pulls up. He's in a Ford Granada. I don't know if you remember those cars. And I get in the front, Andy gets in the back, we start driving, and he's got a scarf on his neck. It's a little weird. Reminds me of that guy from Three's Company, the Mr. Roper or whatever, yeah. So we're going, and he goes, where are you going? And we go, well, east, we'll go as far as you're going. And he goes, well, me and my old lady are going to Phoenix tomorrow, and I'm so young. When he says old lady, I think, Mom? I'm a kid. And he goes, okay, so we're staying in this hotel. So he says, now listen, if we go there, my old lady, she's 5'3", 116 pounds, 34, 24, goes and he goes, if she wants to, and just goes into the most nasty, blow you, and you know what I mean, wants you to eat her, crazy dirty talk, crazy. And we're both looking at, and then we're yeah, no, we don't want to spend the night. We're good. And he goes, so literally he's no, you don't want it? No, we're good. So then he's okay, and he let us off in the middle of nowhere. Now dig it. So he lets us off. We're in the middle of the desert. We spent the night there, and a trucker picked us up the next morning. But 5 minutes later, he went back and got that other kid, and I saw him driving by with the kid. And I don't know, couple years later, there was a ad, you can look him up, Randy Kraft. He was this fucking guy killing kids. And I think if you want me to say what I think happened, I think that he knew there were two of us, and he had to get us off the road and maybe pop one of us. And then, I don't know, maybe killed, I don't know.
Is that how he was doing it?
I don't know. I know that when they caught him, he had a dead body, he had a dead Marine in the passenger seat. He was going up and down that corridor killing people. You don't realize how many. There was a lot of them, man. And later they would say, you'd read and they go, oh, there's 50 or 60 still. There's more, man. There's a lot of them. There's a lot of people. Those roads are dangerous, man. But yeah, that's my experience with that. Another time when I was in the group homes, because, I talked a little bit about this in the other thing. I ended up in group homes and all that because, if you're a wayward kid and the system grabs you, let's say it's late at night and...
Your mother's in LA, but she's just not...
No,
she's to and from.
She's all over. She lived in Vegas. She lived in, she's just gone. One time I hitchhiked there and my grandmother wouldn't let me spend the night, and I never understood why. I would sleep in the park 2 blocks from her house. I would sleep in this flower bed, and then in the morning I'd go over there and she'd make me breakfast, and so we're sitting there eating breakfast, and she says to me, Shane, I understand everything that you do, and but you should never have stolen your grandfather's gold. And I'm like, what? And I realized Ma had stolen her father's gold and blamed me for it. And I didn't do it. Now, Ma and me worked shit out in the prison visiting rooms later. But I think about that with my kids. I couldn't believe it.
You were pretty left to your own devices.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, well, I was born in Colorado, but I left when I was 12.
So what area? Venice?
Yeah, well, what the thing, okay, the thing about being a street kid, I hitchhiked across the country a couple of times, but the thing about being a street kid in the 70s is they have a lot of spiritual, the movement for spiritual inner awareness, Paramahansa, the Krishna temple gives food. And you're a clean-faced, baby-faced boy. You know what I mean? And so a lot of those people are actually predators. You don't think they are, but they are. When you're a kid and they're telling you that they're going to give you the keys to Enoch, or they're doing tarot cards, or they're explaining the ascended masters, what one of them believed was that you're in this life, and then after you do enough good deeds, you ascend. They said Jesus Christ was an ascended master, El Moria was an ascended master, Saint Germain. They even said Walt Disney was.
Why were you on the street? Like what?
My family was like, I guess, a middle-class family, but my grandfather was the glue that kept us together, and he was a pharmacist, and he didn't like medication, so he had high blood pressure, so he didn't take it, so he dropped dead of a heart attack when I was 12, and I think basically without him, my family, we lost all, and I was with my mom. My mom was a street. She wasn't a street person, but she was in trouble. She was in trouble. She hung bad paper. She hung out with bad dudes.
Because of drugs?
Yeah, and just I think she just was irresponsible. I don't.
This is in Colorado.
Yeah, and New Mexico, we followed a guy down there. There was a guy that she really liked, and we would kind of follow her boyfriends. And then when my grandfather died, we fled at night from New Mexico to Colorado, and maybe 2 weeks later, I came home and my bags were packed, and she was like, one of us has to go. And I knew she meant me. And I mean, I was a pretty tough kid, so I
What was Venice like? What year exactly?
Okay, when I got to Venice, Venice was 79. Venice, I was at the movement of spiritual inner awareness was like in the West Side, and I had met this family, this chick and her mom, and they let me live with them on Elk Grove Avenue, and that was the beginning of like LA. That's the first time I saw punk rock kids, and those skaters are out there, and I used to skate in Dogtown. So
was Venice deteriorated at this point?
I was by Lincoln Boulevard where I lived, and yeah, but it wasn't like now. I mean, Venice was actually cool. There was Perry's Pizza still, like the pizza places, and it wasn't nothing like it is now. But they had Muscle Beach. They didn't have a skate park yet. That was still, from there I found punk rock, and when I found punk rock, that was kind of it for me. There was a guy that was in the movement of spiritual inner awareness, and we were doing these like teen training things where we'd all meet at a house and talk about, spiritual shit. And he was like me, he was a fuck up. He had just got out of YA, and so I jumped on the back of a motorcycle, and we went up Sunset Boulevard, and then the Ramones were playing at the Whiskey, and that was it for me. I saw the Ramones. Well, I had long blonde hair, and I went in there, and I had white surfer painter pants on and a surf shirt. I remember I put my hair behind my ears because I didn't know what to do. It was all punk rock people, and I'm real young, and I'm going to the guy's bathroom, and all the dudes are like, this is the guy's bathroom. You need to go to the girl's bathroom, because I was such a baby. And I am like, I am a guy. I show him I saw Joey Ramone, and he was like, this song's a real tear jerker. And then he'd go into Blitzkrieg Bop, and I was like, it just bought it, lock, stock, and barrel. I fucking loved it. So I went home, and I cut my hair. I got, the woman I lived with was a hairdresser. So she worked at this place in Playa del Rey, and I got him to cut my hair for cleaning the place. And after I cut my hair, that was it. That changed my whole life, punk rock. There was a kid that played pinball, I was saying, and he was a skinhead, but not like a skinhead. Skinheads then weren't like the English skinhead, different. There wasn't racial yet. Not that I knew of.
It's kind of anti-racist.
Yeah, of course. Punk rock had not, Punk rock had nothing to do with that. Not then. I think later, and I think maybe in London, but I didn't find out about that till later. But the Ramones were playing the Whiskey, and I went to the show, and then after that, the people I lived with in Venice, the woman and her daughter, she was a hairstylist, so I cleaned the barber shop so they'd cut my hair. I had long hair, and then I cut it for punk rock. And then I went into the 7-Eleven where the Skinhead played. There were a couple of them, and they played pinball, and I went in there and said, I'm like you guys, and they beat the fuck out of me. And so 79, 80, 81, I got engulfed in it big time. I mean, big time. But, you know, at that time, when we drove by the Whiskey, as many punk rock kids didn't go in, and they just hung out on the street. And I mean, it was like wonderful. I mean, you know, I can't tell you how great it was. And then once you got in with them, once everybody, you know, at first, and the skateboard scene, those guys were turning into punkers too. So I didn't realize at the time it was going to be as amazing as it was. I just liked the energy of it, and I liked the slam dancing. And, you know, now I guess they've been doing it for 40 or 50 years, but at that time it was very unique.
But it got kind of rough, didn't it?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah, of course, because, okay, so what you get with punk rock, with that, is, okay, one day it's cool to wear bandanas on your boots and chains. The next day, if you wear them, they'll beat you up. And then, you know, they're kids, so they divide into gangs. But it's not like gangs like Cholo gangs. That came later, like in 80, I want to say 82.
What was the demographic? Was it a mixture of mostly white? Was it lower?
White and Mexican kids. There was a lot of Mexican kids. You know, because LA's occupied Mexico, so. Yeah. A lot of single mother home, you know what I mean? Kids looking for something. I think some of them ended up punk rockers because they lived near the clubs and they'd see the people, and then, you know, or they lived on Melrose. There was a big street because, you know, they had vinyl fetish. They had like record stores that were punk rock. And I didn't realize until The Decline, this movie came out, you know, when they were filming it. I remember when Penelope, they were filming it, and the Germs and Black Flag and all those bands. X, I loved X back then. Fucking loved them. I realized when they had the premiere for that on Hollywood Boulevard, they had a riot, and the cops came and they beat everyone up. I realized punk rock was going to be big. I realized that. And then one time I was at a Dead Kennedys show, but this is summer of 81, and it was huge, and there were kids jumping off this. It was the first time I saw kids like doing backflips off, like, I was a little kid. Yeah. And I mean, I was getting in trouble. I was already like starting to do drugs, intravenous narcotics, and part of that, and this is what's unfortunate for people. When you look up to rock stars or punk rock stars, Sid Vicious and them, and they're doing it, Keith Richards, all that, it has this glamour to it. I got all entranced, you know, and the truth is it doesn't exist. You know, you're a drug addict, but they have money, you don't. You dig what I'm saying? So you might, when you're fixing, you might think that you have something in common with Keith Richards, but you don't. But yeah, I think the drug use and the intravenous drug use had a lot to do with Sid Vicious, a lot to do with Keith Richards and Jim Carroll, the Basketball Diaries. It went hand in hand with punk rock. It really did. Dope did. Heroin and.
Did you feel like the streets at that time were somewhat unsafe, very unsafe?
Oh well, the thing is, okay, so if you leave a kid that age, especially, you know, kind of a rambunctious kid like me, a skater, or, you know, if you leave him up to his own devices, and you know, I mean, you get the thing going where, you know, if your mother doesn't fucking care about you, God bless her. So, you know, I mean, she's dead now, and, you know, but if she doesn't really give a fuck, then it's hard for you to care about yourself. You know what I'm saying? So, and then by the time they try to, you know, bring you in, like let's say group homes or whatever, you're so feral that you ain't staying. You'll stay for a while, but you're gonna run, you're gonna, and that's basically it. And then with drugs, I would start robbing or burglarizing.
What age did you commit your first serious crime?
First time I got busted was
Well,
for
not necessarily busted, but when did you do something?
13, 14, 13.
Is that money just to live or for?
Well, the first time was selling weed at school. I got busted still in Colorado before my grandfather died. They sent a Boy Scout in me. There was a narcotics detective, Dick Dutro. And my brother...
They sent a narc in an 8th grader?
Yeah, now listen. My brother was a sheriff. When we were little kids, we'd play cops and robbers. I'd be the robber, he'd be the cop. He ended up fucking 30 years. He was a fucking sheriff. He was the SWAT guy, Lance Enholm. You can look him up. He was a dog handler. He was the yeah, he stayed with my grandmother. He was stable.
Tell us about starting your band.
The band?
Yeah.
The Flower Leopards?
Yeah. Because you told us about you were in the punk rock scene, but then you actually became.
Well, I learned to play guitar, and I luckily, because I was into like Led Zeppelin, really good guitar players. And the thing about punk rock, what it teaches you is it teaches you that anyone can be a star. That's kind of punk rock, that there's no rock stars, even though they became rock stars later. But that was the premise in the beginning. And that anyone could play, like here, play a couple chords, you become, they had 2 or 3 chord songs. But I had a natural ability to play guitar. So the Flower Leopards were already together. I had played in a couple other little bands, but they knew I could play Alice Cooper songs. I was really into Alice Cooper, which is a good step into punk rock because Alice is kind of it's that theater rock and shock rock and Alice and New York Dolls and yeah, we toured with Social Distortion a few times.
You were getting some.
Oh yeah, we got a record. It's everywhere. If you look up the original Flower Leopards, I have all kinds of So I still get BMI checks. I get about $190 every 3 months from them.
Hey, that's 40 years.
Yeah, well, I lost them for a while because when I went to prison, the bass player took my name off the songs. And he's dead now, God bless him. When I got out of prison, I actually saw him and I didn't think anything of it. I don't think he did it with real ill intent. I think when I robbed the banks, they figured I'd never get back, like fuck it. But the record label helped me get all my songs back. I mean, the band was defunct.
Yeah,
and they called me and they're like, hey, Shane, we can get these all back. Because I'd already signed the contracts,
So you were sort of having a little bit of a
Yeah, but heroin got in the way.
Okay. And then the heroin was getting bad and you met the
Casey?
Casey.
Casey. The first time I met Casey, she lived at this place called the Oxford House, and Darby Crash lived there, and it was like a known house.
Tell people who Darby is.
Darby was the singer of the Germs. Darby Crash. He was like a punk rock icon in Los Angeles.
So he was going to poised to possibly be like an actual star.
Yeah, he was big, like in LA. He was our Sid Vicious kind of, and Casey and him were together, sort of. And Michelle Bell, my other girlfriend, that whole crowd was my crowd. Because even though punk rock, it was small. You know what I mean? So everyone kind of knew everyone. And
you were younger than that.
Oh, fuck yeah. 12 years younger than some of them.
28?
Yeah, she was 28 when I met her. I was 16. I think Darby was 22 when he died. I think she was 27. I met well, when I got with her, she was 28. I had met her before that. And what happened is her and Darby had a suicide pact. I think they have a book, What We Do Is Secret now, and I think even they did a movie. And what bummed me out, I have an article coming out in Cream, this next Cream, I wrote about it, because what bummed me out was I have daughters with her.
This was like a big event.
Huge. There's people that are fanatic about Darby to this day. Like I get people that come in the tattoo shop that know who I am, and all they want to do is talk about Darby. He was quite a poet. He really was. If you read his lyrics, it's pretty amazing. But he always talked about dying. He wasn't going to live long. He always said that. He didn't want, you know. So somehow him and Casey had a suicide pact, and Casey lived on Fuller Street in West LA. No, in Melrose, in Fairfax. It's not West LA. It's kind of by West Hollywood. And her mom was an advertising exec, and she had a back house, and they went back there, and they took the rent money from the Oxford house, and they went back there, and when you're a junkie, they have these things. I'm the one that came up with this theory. Everyone has all these theories. But being with Casey years later, and I was so enamored with the germs and everything that, you know, I laid in that bed that he died in, because they had a suicide pact, okay? He dies, she lives.
They shot up and one she didn't die.
And I think he spoon tricked her. I think he drew it all up, and he put water in the spoon and drew water up for her. Junkies do that. If they're all using the same spoon and you aren't savvy and watching, they're junkies. You know, like there's only enough dope for me. So, you know, that's what I think happened with her. Because they had $400 worth of dope. I know where they got the dope. There's no reason that they both wouldn't have died. They weren't junkies. They were recreational users. That was a lot of dope. You could do a dime and you'd be high as a kite. So $200 worth if they split $400. But I think he wanted to make sure he died. So she woke up the next day. He was dead. And then I ended up with her. What happened is we had a punk rock show at the Starwood, was a West LA club. It was owned by Eddie Nash. And Eddie Nash, he was the guy that, and he gave me a gram of coke once. He was the guy that John Holmes and the murders up there at Wonderland. Yeah. And Eddie owned the Starwood. You know, he just gave me a gram of coke one time.
He was just a club owner.
Yeah, but it was just because I was in the right place at the right time. And when he gave it to me, he had a broom. This is weird, but he put it in the bristles, and we're in the club.
But you're about 16.
Yeah, we're in the club. It's crowded. Okay, he's standing. There's an office. There was a stair to an office, and I'm standing on the stairs. He's there. I don't know he's Eddie Nash. I know he owns the club, but I don't know nothing really about him. I just know he's the club guy. You know, he's the guy that books the bands, and he had a broom, and he went, hey, and he kind of hit me with the broom, and I looked at him, and in the bristles was a fold of coke, and I took the coke, and he smiled at me, and
He must have been 50 at this time.
Oh yeah. But I think that world, it was different then. It was very different then.
If you were there, you was whatever.
I think he was spun probably doing drugs and stuff, and just, but yeah, because I mean the broom, that's really weird.
Unless he swept it up and it was in the broom.
Yeah, well, but then he hands it to me. You know what I mean? Well, and then he doesn't have culpability, does he? Because he's not.
He didn't want to reach in the broom.
He's not handing it. He's hit me with the broom, and I look at it, and he's.
Did you were in that infamous The Lads?
Yeah. Los Angeles Death Squad. Yeah. Yeah, I was Mr. Criminal. Yeah. It's funny because it changed over time. Originally, the gang was the Death Squad, DS, and people would do this cross on their face. Suicidal Tendencies, Mike Muir and Jay Adams and all those kids were it. And then there was a beef they got into, and we formed Los Angeles Death Squad. They formed Suicidal Tendencies, and we always kind of had a beef with those guys. Of course, not anymore.
Suicidal Tendencies became
huge. But at the time, they were a gang. They might have been a band, but the gang, there was a Venice gang.
Because there was so much fighting going on?
Yeah, just weak fist fighting and stuff. It's good, right?
So
yeah.
What, if you were a band, you kind of had to have a crew?
No, well, you know what I think? I think what was going on at that time is LA was really gang oriented. There was the Crips, the Bloods, the fucking Cholos, White Fence.
Even if everyone was going to somewhat conform.
Right, and there was a few guys, punk rock guys, kind of Chicano guys, Arnell and Alex, that they were the head of the lads. Now there were no leaders per se, but we'd have meetings in the park. We'd meet at the park, 3rd and Gardner, And we had a little envelope that we would put in for trust fund for everyone, you know, kind of like if you went to jail, but it was punk rock. Because I remember I had another friend, Bob.
You wouldn't really consider it a gang, per se.
Not like a real gang.
Sort of, but not really.
Yeah, not like a. No, well, also a lot of them were rich kids.
It didn't exist for criminal purposes.
No, and it had no territory.
Yeah, and it was to protect each other.
Right. It had no territory. It had no, you know what I mean? I think a lot of those kids.
More like a crew.
Right, because a lot of those kids were like from Beverly Hills and came from good, you know, gangs in LA usually was a bad neighborhood, and they would, you know, had no father, and they would, you know.
So those kids would have got, some of the punk rock kids from the nicer neighborhoods might have got preyed on if they're.
Oh, fuck yeah. Yeah, because when like I was coming down and copping dope, and the kids were getting into it, but they would send me to go get it because I was a street kid. I'd come down here, and I was copping from a guy from 18th Street, Happy. And then they were, I think, if I had to, you know, be completely honest, I think they were fascinated with it. I think that guys, like everything in life, I think they blow it up to be bigger than it really is. I think, you know, they write about or whatever, and I mean, it was prevalent, but I mean, my friend was Lone Wolf, Carlton was Dopey, Alex was Boxer. And I mean, we beat people up. We did.
I mean, the newspaper kind of hyped it up. So.
Yeah. Okay, I'll give you an example. There's a kid that was a suicidal kid, Rick Clayton. He's a tattooer now. I see him around. He's actually a Mongol now, a long-term Mongol. A lot of the Venice guys, I think, the suicidal guy, I don't know, but he was. And he drew all the shirts the suicidal guys would wear. They wear these white shirts where they put these skulls on them. And Rick drew them. And Oliver was in Lads. He was a guy, he ended up being like the bodyguard for Ozzy or them guys. I don't know who, maybe Rick Rubin, those guys. But at the time, he caught Rick Clayton in the alley by the Olympic. The Olympic was a boxing theater. They used to have punk rock shows, big punk rock shows. They had Public Image played there, and you know, so they caught Rick and they beat him up. And the next day we're at the Cafe de Grand, which was a big punk rock club in LA. It was on Argyle and Selma. And me and Carlton, who's Dopey, we were there, and this lowrider pulls up, and these guys get out, and they're like, "You got Lad's hair." Now what they mean by that is we had dyed black hair. I brought some photos, I'll show you. And they were like, "You got Lad's hair." They were looking for payback for Rick. But the guitar player for Suicidal Tendencies was in the car. And he goes, "I know this guy, it's Shane. He plays guitar. He's a really good guitar player." I'm like, "Yes." You know, like, please. I mean, they had bats. They were going to fuck us up. And so I was like, "Yes." And then one of the guys was like, "No, fuck that. Fuck those guys. Let's fuck them up." And then the guy's like, no, we're not fucking him up. He's a guitar player like me. We're musicians. You know, and I was so grateful for that. And after that, I started shying away from it.
And did you get further into drugs at that point?
I was already shooting dope.
I feel like you crossed the line of, now I'm a guy that's in the street and the band is going away.
I'll tell you, we were recording our, we had an EP out, it's out. And we had done a few compilations and they had done really well. And really well for punk rock. And we were recording our album, and the singer was into coke, and he was at a coke dealer somewhere in Covina. That's where the band was, kind of from Covina out that way. I was always Hollywood. I used to take the bus out there and rehearse with them. And the coke dealer, there was a car outside, and the coke dealer said, "Here, run this coke out to the guy." And the guy was a sheriff, and he busted him. And Mark's parents were rich, so they sent him to rehab. And when they sent him to rehab, the band.
So that was the first thing in your life that had kind of been getting some momentum.
And then after that, me and Casey, we were strung out. So we ended up
together as boyfriend and girlfriend.
Oh yeah, by then, yeah. What happened with that? And I know you got to go back, but we were at one of the Starwood shows. They arrested everybody. Sometimes the West Hollywood sheriffs would do that. They come to Okie Dogs, they arrest everybody. And I was living in Long Beach at the time, and I was at the parking lot of the West Hollywood Sheriff Station, and so was Casey. Now, Darby, she had just gotten out of the nut ward. from dying with Darby. You know what I mean? Like, what happened is, I guess when he died, they busted her for under the influence. They put her in the nut ward for 90 days. It was maybe February. He died on December 3rd, 1980, so it's maybe February 1981. And she's like, hey, you want to come to my house? I'm going to cook chicken. And I'm like,
was punk rock sort of going down itself at that point?
no, it was still coming up. It was still on its way up. And I'm like, yeah. So we went there, and she fed me, and one thing led to another, and I ended up with her. You know, but I mean, I'm looking for a mom. I'm a kid. You dig? I'm looking for a mom. So then later with the Flower Leopards, okay, when Mark goes to jail, then I'm left. I'm not working. You know, I had a habit, just a $20 a day probably habit going, and me and Casey eventually ended up, you know, downtown, and we ended up losing our apartment because we'd spend the rent money on dope, and, you know, one day we ended up downtown, and for a while we copped. We would beg money or steal or do whatever we had to do, you know, whatever it was, musical equipment, you know, steal, whatever, and we ended up, that's when I started robbing banks. But I had gone away for pharmacy robberies before that too. I know it's confusing, but when I was younger,
like what age?
well, I turned 18 in juvie, and they took me straight to the adult prison. So it was after Darby died. It was summer of '81. I knew a girl whose father was a doctor, and I was working at this restaurant washing dishes. I had a job for a little while, and she had a doctor bag, and I went in the car. She was in the restaurant and stole it, and had morphine and stuff. And then I read the address, broke in there, then the address to the pharmacy he had got it from. Then me and this other guy, we got some guns, and we started robbing pharmacies. I got caught. I was still a juvenile.
How much time?
Well, what happened was they gave me a choice. I could either go to YA or I could go to adult prison. YA at that time, you could go till you're 25, 7 years about I do. Or I could take at the time they sentenced you, like burglary, they'd sentence you to 1, 18, or 2. Like, so that means like 1, 1.5, or 2. It was like a 3, you know what I mean? Or 7, 5, 7, 6, or 5, 6, 7. Like the way they sentence you. I don't know if they do it that way anymore, but so they were offering me either you're going to go to adult prison and you don't get the YA number, and they talked about giving me an N number, which at that time was a narcotics number, which you'd go to CRC. But I got a regular number, and went to the big house, and I had a hard time. I was a young guy, you know.
Where'd you go?
Quentin.
Oh, with a 2-year sentence?
Oh, fuck yeah. Yeah.
There weren't that many prisons.
Oh, no, it was a smaller system at the time. Yeah, it wasn't a 2-year sentence. It was a 3. It was
Oh, let's see, that was what year?
81.
Oh, a lot of the gangs were starting to get in there.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, but what happened, I wasn't there that long that time, because what happened was they had a drug program at the state hospital up on the 6th floor. And they had this drug program called Synergy, Synanon. You can look at...
Oh, that's a big scandal.
Okay.
You know what happened with that?
No.
Oh, I just read a long article that became... Oh, read about it.
Okay, well, they called it the family.
The guy was trying to kill people that quit. He got disgraced. Oh, it was great.
Okay.
They shut it down.
I got
huge for a while.
I got a part of, had a piece of that.
It lasted to around the mid-'80s, right?
They had the 6th floor of the state hospital, and they were taking prisoners, male and female. They had 2 wings off the 6th floor, and it was locked. You know, it's a fucking state hospital. And I was there, and I got a visit. They said, visit. And I'm like, visit? I don't have a visit. And it was a woman named Barbara Callahan, and she had a beehive hairdo. You know, I think she had run with a lot of East LA. You know, she's white broad, but she seemed like one of them. And she was like, hey, Shane. She's like, her I've been reading about you, and I have this drug program, and it's state, you know what I mean? And you'd be a perfect candidate to go. You know, you're young, and you've been in the system for years. I was in the fire camps and group homes, and, you know, because intermittently with punk rock and all that, was in the system, I'd run. The whole time I was in punk rock, I was on the run.
So at this point...
I hope this is all making sense.
Well, let me ask you, so at this point, you're about 19?
Well, when I went to I 18.
18. But you've been to fire camp.
Oh yeah, I've been through all that since I was. Oh yeah, juvenile hall, YA, all of it.